I think the means are right, but the goal will never fly. You want to say you're agnostic on Israel? You want to say you want one state? There's nothing in the international law for one state. You're not going to win a public to that. Once you step out of your little cult, your little ghetto, and you enter the real world, and you try to reach a broad public, and you say, we are a rights-based organization, which is what BDS likes to say, and we want to enforce our rights. Okay, the law. So, once you step out of your ghetto, you're no longer just talking to yourself. There is the other side. They also make themselves heard. So they say, no, that's not true. They're lying. They say they want to enforce the law, but they really want to destroy Israel. They want to eliminate Israel. So now the public hears both sides. And they come back to the solidarity movement, and they say, is that true? You want to destroy Israel? And then the solidarity movement says, oh, we don't have a position on Israel. We don't take a position. Oh, really? You don't take a position on Israel? Well, then we're not going to take a position on BDS. The law is clear. You want to use the International Court of Justice on your side? Okay, the International Court of Justice, it said, the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, they are occupied Palestinian territories. That's correct. But the ICJ also said that pre-June 67 border is Israel's legal border. That's their country. That's the law. You want to promote one state? Fine, that's your right. But then don't pretend you're trying to enforce the law. That's not true. You want to selectively enforce the law. There is nothing anywhere in the international consensus for resolving the conflict that says anything about the minority inside Israel, the Palestinian Arab minority. It's not there. You want to drag in that minority and start talking about them, well, in my opinion, you'll get nowhere, because the whole world is filled with countries that persecute their minorities. Would you like to be an untouchable in India? Do you know what it's like to be a Dalit in India? Do you want to go through every country in the Middle East and how they treat their minorities? And then it's just open season by the other side to show what hypocrites you are. Why are you focusing on that minority and not 10 million other minorities in the world? People want to just drag in the kitchen sink because it's not really about them. I mean, we have to be honest. And I loathe the disingenuousness. They don't want Israel. They think they're being very clever. They call it their three-tier. We want the end of the occupation, we want the right of return, and we want equal rights for Arabs in Israel. And they think they're very clever because they know the result of implementing all three is what? What's the result? You know and I know. What's the result?
I think we don't.
There's no Israel.
I think there's
No.
But I think the result is like there's no Israel the way Israel is now.
There is no Israel, full stop. And the law is, Israel is a state, it has its defined borders, and if you want to eliminate Israel, that's your right. But I don't think you're going to reach anybody. I think it's a non-starter. If you say you want to enforce the law, and in fact impose it on Israel, because they're not going to be accepted, then the law is clear. And you have to say, and you'll never hear the Solidarity Movement say, 2 states. And if you don't want the framework, then stop talking about the law. And stop trying to be so clever, because you're only clever in your cult. The moment you step out, you have to deal with Israeli propaganda. And here they have a case. They say, no, they're not really talking about rights. They're talking about they want to destroy Israel. And in fact, I think they're right. I think that's true. I'm not going to lie. Do we want to build a movement or do we want to create a cult? Now, Frank, you have to be honest. Honesty is important in politics. If you tell a public, Israel's population is 7.5 million. Of those 7.5 million, 5.5 million are Jewish. And the other 2 million are Palestinian, Arab, and neither of the above. And you say, as a lot of the solidarity movement says, all 6 million Palestinian refugees have to go back. Okay? Now, will a public think it's reasonable for 6 million Palestinians to descend on a country which right now has 1.8 million Palestinians and 5.5 million Jews, which means you're going to completely, overnight, radically, completely change the demographic balance in the country. Will a person, the public, find that reasonable? My answer is, you can give them every fact behind the creation of the refugees, and they'll still see the Israeli position that that's not tenable. I don't think you can sell it.
I've never heard people saying you 6 million refugees.
I hear it all the time.
Okay, so
not never. I'm saying reverse.
Yeah.
I hear it all the time. I just spoke last night in Glasgow, and that was the first statement. What about the 6 million Palestinian refugees who want to return? That was the very first question. I hear it all the time. I hear sometimes people say, until every one of the 7 million go back, we won't accept the settlement.
I do think that the cult is not a little, it's actually getting bigger. Maybe it's not, and the BDS movement has actually, with its flaws maybe, succeeded in grasping people's attention and students.
Frank,
And it's
we have to free ourselves of illusions. When I don't know how old you are, but when I was a young man, I was a Maoist, you know? And we always thought our movement is growing. 6,000, 8,000, we're growing, you know? What you call growing, how many people are you really reaching? Are you reaching a mainstream public? I don't think so. Israel will start to say, what about us? And they won't recognize our right. And in fact, that's correct. You can't answer the Israelis on that because they're making a statement that's factually correct. It's not an accident, an unwitting omission that BDS does not mention Israel. You know that, and I know that. It's not like we forgot to mention it. They won't mention it because they know it will split the movement. Because there's a large segment of the movement, component of the movement, which wants to eliminate Israel. Is Israel part of the law or not? When the International Court of Justice made all of its findings in its advisory opinion, one of its findings was the June 67 border is Israel's legal border. That is Israel. That's the law. How can you claim that you want to enforce the law and omit that aspect of the law?
The two-state solution, we know that the facts on the ground, mainly because of Israel, like for example building in the E1 zone, are going to make the two-state solution pretty much impossible.
No, it's not true. I will talk about it at length tonight. I'm going to go through the maps.
Okay.
And then you'll judge for yourself. The problem is people are all over the place When you say it's practically possible, then they say they're ideologically against it. And if you say it's ideologically, you will never be able to reach a public with it, then they say it's practically impossible. Because they don't want to recognize Israel. So it's like every kind of excuse and pretext. I don't see where that's going to go. You know, you talk about BDS, they make all these claims about their victories. All their claims about their victories. Well, you know what? You see these 10 fingers? These more than suffice to count all their victories. There are superfluous fingers here to count all their victories. It's a cult where the guru says we have all these victories and everyone nods their head and nobody sits down to do the arithmetic on their own. It's just sheer nonsense. It's sheer nonsense. It's a cult. And I personally, I'm tired of it. I went through my cult stage. I was a Maoist. Have you ever seen a statement by BDS that doesn't have the first subordinate clause? BDS, the largest civil society organized protest, endorsed by 26,555,000,000,000,000,000, organizations. They're just Ramallah, NGOs. Represent absolutely nothing.
There's trade unions as well.
Oh, look, let's stop. If it were what you said, where are the demonstrations there? If there were really an active...
BDS, I think, is turned to the international community, not to the...
Well, that to me is a problem. I'll tell you the truth. Because if you're an indigenous organization in Palestine, you should be organizing your people. And it's our job to organize from our side. I went through many solidarity movements. The Vietnamese never gave us marching orders. The Nicaraguans, the El Salvadorans, they didn't tell you what to do. They organized their people. And the solidarity movement abroad, we were supposed to make the judgment about how best to organize ourselves. And it's a very strange thing when the people there who claim to be the leaders of civil society, they can't organize a demonstration of 500 people among themselves, but they're telling everybody else abroad what to do. It's a weird inversion. When I was first involved in the Gaza Freedom March, I don't know if you were involved in it.
Yeah, I heard about it.
Okay, they said they were going to bring out 50,000 people in Gaza. 50,000 people. And you know how many they brought out? They brought out 300. It's a cult. You make up numbers, you fantasize, and all the followers are supposed to nod their head. Well, you know what? I'm 58 years old. I've been involved in this 30 years. I gave, and I'm going to say, I gave, for a Westerner, not for a Palestinian, I gave my life to the cause, and I'm not going to be anybody's fool. I'm not wasting time anymore. I'm tired of it. I really am. I've lost patience with it. I'm tired of gurus and I'm tired of cults. Because if we end the occupation and we bring back 6 million Palestinians and we have equal rights for Arabs and Jews, there's no Israel. That's what it's really about. And you think you're fooling anybody? You think you're so clever that people can't figure that out for themselves? No, they understand the arithmetic perfectly well. Are you going to reach a broad public which is going to hear the Israeli side, they want to destroy us? No, you're not. And frankly, you know what? You shouldn't. You shouldn't reach a broad public because you're dishonest. And I wouldn't trust those people if I had to live in the state. I wouldn't. It's dishonesty. And I don't want that kind of leadership. Then at least be honest what you want. We want to abolish Israel, and this is our strategy for doing it. Okay, be straightforward about it. But this kind of duplicity and disingenuousness, oh, we're agnostic about Israel. No, you're not agnostic. You don't want it. Then just say it.